the recording, okay? Okay, so hello everyone, and it's so nice to have all of you today. We're really excited because this is our very first community training session, the very first of many to come in the future, hopefully. And I'm Lamis Elkheir. I'm the training lead at AREN, and I'll be your facilitator for this session. And the next session, you will have Emmanuel, who is the director of AREN, who will be facilitating the session. So today, let me share my screen. So we would like to start with our community open science from the very beginning. So understanding what is open science before diving more into like the different aspects of open science. So this will be the first of two introductory sessions in which we will introduce you to open science in general. And during the trainings, on our online trainings, we would like to maintain a code of conduct in which we embrace our diversity, as we come from, well, all Africans, but we come from so many different African countries with different backgrounds. So we would really like to embrace this diversity, and also like to promote constructive communication between each other and foster collaboration and sharing, and maintain professionalism in disagreement. In case anyone had someone violating or noticed someone violating this code of conduct, please feel free to contact us via our email, team@africanaren.org, or use our incident report form, which we will provide for you in the coming hours, so that you could report any violation in the code of conduct. So on to today's session. I can see here that we have some of the local network training leads with us. I think this would be sort of a repetition for them, but our other community member, maybe it will be the first time that they go through this. So in this session, we will be discussing what is open science, and the diverse and the drivers that actually prompted the shift towards open science, and the different open science values, principles, and pillars. And please feel free to interrupt me during the presentation if you have any question. Maybe write it in the chat or just raise your hand, and then Emmanuel, if you could just alert me to that, I'd be thankful. So let's start with, just a moment. Let's start with actually what is open science, and we have asked our local network trainees or local network leads trainees, and we asked them this question: what best describes your general understanding of open science? And they had several options, and actually about 85% of the trainees answered using that open science is the practice of making research outputs, including publications, data, and methodologies, freely accessible and usable by others. And we also had about 10% of our trainees answer about open science being primarily concerns making all scientific research available for free to the general public. And actually, both these descriptions are true. Both these descriptions are true. And if you want to have a more generalized definition of open science, we can say that open science is the practice of making scientific research, data, and dissemination accessible to the public, policymakers, practitioners, and professionals, okay? So open science is about accessibility. Bottom line, open science meaning that anyone who is in need of any type of scientific material, whether it is a publication or data or methodology, they should be able to have access to it. There shouldn't be any barriers that would hinder them from accessing this information. And it doesn't have to be, for example, only researchers that have access to this information, but even the public, even policymakers and general practitioners, or bottom line, anyone who is in need of this scientific material. This approach, this openness approach, encourages transparency, reproducibility, and broad collaboration in the research process. And so basically, open science is about removing barriers to knowledge and making science a public good. And by doing that, of course, we will enhance the transparency and the reproducibility of scientific material, and will enhance the collaboration in the different research processes. So you might ask, like, what were the drivers? What were the things that happened in the world that actually made this shift towards open science increasingly popular? And I think most of you have gone through some of these drivers. So the first driver actually was the reproducibility crisis. And by that was that many people were trying, for example, you see a publication and you try to reproduce this publication, but you fail. And this has been like growing exponentially in the past couple of years. So this is a big problem. So the reproducibility crisis, it grew over concerns over the ability to replicate the results of existing studies, okay? And this, of course, affected trust in scientific research, because if I cannot reproduce the results, then maybe the results are not true. So then you will have this concern about whether you should trust science or not. And we could see that in the past few years. People were getting more and more skeptical about conspiracy theories, about like science, maybe just trying to serve a certain purpose that is not in the best interest of the public. And then, of course, if we lose trust, then this will affect the allocation of resources and the formulation of policies, because scientific evidence is important in formulation of policies, for example, when it comes to health. So if we lose trust, then we affect this whole process. And the second issue was the difficult accessibility to scientific literature. And I think us in Africa suffered from that the most. Is usually scientific literature is behind prohibitively expensive paywalls, which we cannot pay. Like one article could cost like $100 or $200 just for you to be able to read it. And for some of us, this is, most of it, I think in Africa, this is too much. So costly subscription-based publishing and paywalls looking up knowledge, and actually it only benefits the publishers, because the publishers, they only publish the science, they didn't really do the science, and they're getting paid for that. So it was excessive profiting for the publishers. And then the third driver was the biases in scholarly review and publication. So traditional peer review, while it is very important in scholarly communication, but over the last years, it has been criticized about the potential for bias and lack of transparency. And of course, this at the end hinders the innovation in research. And I think we've all might have experienced that, is that maybe since you're African and you're coming from an African institution, then like the reviewer have a bias that, oh, maybe you didn't have the resources to do this research, so maybe we shouldn't trust your research and reject, for example, your publication. And finally, there are so many drivers, but I'm mentioning the four most important drivers. And the fourth driver and the final driver that I would like to mention is the lack of collaboration and interdisciplinary research. So the scientific community has been basically working in silos or in isolated islands. Like we have researchers, even in the same country, each research institution is working independently from the other research institution. And even within the same research institution, you have teams sort of competing and hiding information from each other. And of course, this limits the exchange of ideas and methodologies, and this in turn hinders the progress of multi-faceted research questions and slows innovation and the application of research finding to solve complex global challenges. So it became increasingly important for people to collaborate because maybe this team has some resources that the other team don't have, while the other team has resources that the first team don't have. So if we collaborate, we could actually solve bigger challenges and bigger problems. So these are the main or the most important drivers that made people think in the scientific community that we need to make open science the norm in all of the scientific processes. So actually, we would like to have a small poll for you. So if Emmanuel, if you could launch the poll.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now.
Okay. So you should have the polls in your screen. So we would like to ask you if you could select any of the following issues that you have personally experienced. Was it reproduction of a study, accessing scientific material, some issues or biases with the peer review processes, or issues in finding collaborators? So please select all that applies to you. We'll give it about 5 minutes. Okay, I can see accessing scientific materials is leading the race.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is expected.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. We have 8 more people who didn't vote. Okay, let's wait. Okay, we have about 5 people who didn't vote. Is anyone having issues accessing the poll? Because I can see that we have about 5 people who didn't vote.
Leila says she is having issues accessing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you could write your answer in the chat.
I'm not sure she can even see the questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the question was, we asked we asked you if you had any problems reproducing a study, or you faced any problems in accessing scientific material, or you had maybe you wanted to publish something and had some biases with the peer review process, or you had difficulty in finding collaborators. So if you had any of these difficulties, you might just write it in the chat. So I think we could end the poll, or would we wait a bit, Emmanuel?
No, I
What do you
think we
think?
can end it now.
Okay, okay. So I'll end the poll and we'll be able to see the results. So I think, can you see the results or not yet? Share the results, yeah. You should be able to see the results now. And as expected, the majority, 39%, had issues accessing scientific material. And of course, we all know that this is a big issue in Africa, because maybe in the global north, in Europe and America, institutions pay for publishers to have access to their published materials, but in Africa, we don't have that in most of the cases. And then coming next is reproducibility. Yes, and this is also expected. You see a methodology in a paper that's well written and the results are like perfect. But then when you try to do it, the results are never as written in the paper. And then we have a tie between peer review processes and finding collaborators. Yeah, I think it would make sense. So I guess you can see from this poll that this is really something that all of us face, I think, and to a greater extent, all of us in Africa face. But not just us, even researchers in developed countries, maybe they don't have the issue of accessing scientific material to the extent that we do, but they also have issues with reproducing studies and finding collaborators and biases in the peer review process. Yeah, I'll stop sharing. So is there any question until this point? Do we have any questions in the chat, Emmanuel?
Yes, I sent a question to the chat.
Oh, go ahead. You can ask it.
Okay. I want to know whether there's a difference between reproducibility and replicability.
Yeah. Actually, we would probably have another session that describes that to a greater extent. But reproducibility is about using the same methodologies and the same data to basically reproduce the same results. But replicability is using the same methodologies and maybe a slightly different data and also getting similar results. But we will try to have a whole session about reproducibility where we would explain all of these in details. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more question? Okay, I can see Nina has a comment that also some scholars, especially younger ones, yes, have challenges identifying suitable journals and getting manuscript. Yes, I think this is a big issue, Nina, and here also comes another issue of predatory journals, which actually pry on these young researchers who don't have experience in publishing. But this is a whole another issue that needs maybe 1 or 2 sessions on its own. So if there is no more questions, I will continue with the presentation of today. So open science came to address key challenges in science, okay? And it does that through open practices. So as we said, open science has emerged as a transformative approach to address several critical issues facing the scientific community today. And it does so by fostering a collective agreement on employing certain values, principles, and pillars. And these values, principles, and pillars have to work sort of dynamically together to create a framework for community and collaboration. So open science is based on certain open science practices, and these include values, principles, and pillars. And if we collectively employ these values, principles, and pillars, at the end, we will have a good framework that fosters open communication for community and collaboration. So we could think of open science or the open science practices as a building, okay, as a building. And actually the foundation of this building is made from the open science values And these are the ethical and moral beliefs that underpin the open science movement, okay? So these are basically the beliefs that we all have to believe in and accept in order to practice open science. And the second foundation is the open science principles. And these are the guidelines that motivate the adoption of open practices. We will talk in much details about these values and principles and pillars. And then we have the pillars of our building, and these are all the open science pillars. So these are the pillars that hold this whole building of open science together. And these are the fundamental components or categories that structure the open science framework. And finally, since we now have a good foundation and a good pillars that hold this whole building together, we could put a roof over our heads. And this roof actually represents the community and collaboration, which is the creation of a collaborative and inclusive scientific community that nourish and support the growth of open science. So without the foundation and without the pillars, we would not be able to have the roof of the community. So having the foundation and having the pillars are important to support the community. So let's start by talking about open science values. And open science values are actually equity, integrity, and collective benefit. Okay, so these are the values that we need to believe in or adopt in order to be able to practice open science. And by equity, we mean that ensuring equal access to scientific knowledge and equal opportunities to contribute into this scientific knowledge. So everyone should be able to access knowledge, and everyone should be able to contribute or disseminate their own knowledge. Then we have integrity, and by integrity, we mean upholding high standards of honesty and transparency in conducting and reporting research. So we have to be honest about what we did and what we didn't do, and about the results that we had, even if they were not the results that we're looking for, and be transparent about that while conducting and reporting research. And the final value, and by the way, if you go and read about open science, you find many values, but then I sort of grouped them into those three main categories. So the final value is the collective benefit, which is the whole idea of open science, is that knowledge is a collective asset that should benefit society as a whole. So knowledge should not belong to a certain group of people or a certain country or a certain lab, but knowledge is a public good. It's a collective asset that all of us should be able to benefit from it. Whether, as I said before, we were scientists, we were even part of the public, because we conduct usually this research, our research, using the public data. So it makes sense that the public has access to this data and be able to benefit from the finding of this research. Now moving on to the open science principles, and these are transparency, accessibility, reproducibility, collaboration, and inclusivity. And by transparency, we mean that we make the research process openly available at all stages. So if we want to practice open science, we have to adopt this principle, is that we have to be transparent and make all of our research process openly available at all stages. Accessibility, and you can see that the principles and values sort of mingle together. Like, we cannot say that the values are concrete category that is separate from the principles. They are all sort of working dynamically together to help us practice open science. So by accessibility, we mean that we ensuring that the scientific outputs are, as we said, accessible to all, removing any type of barriers, which they were, whether they were financial, whether they technical or legal. Then we have reproducibility, and this is facilitating the verification of results through shared data and shared methodologies. And we have collaboration, and this is encouraging cooperative work across disciplines and geographical boundaries. So to practice open science, different disciplines should be able to work together, and even different scientists from different countries or even from different continents should be able to work together. And finally, inclusivity, which is promoting diversity and participation in science by all sectors of the society. So whether you were an early career researcher, whether you were a retired researcher, whether anyone in between, and even the community, we now increasingly see that when developing a proposal, actually people include part of the community that they're trying to do this research on, even though that they are not scientists, but they could provide valuable information about things that maybe the researcher did not notice. So this is very important, is inclusivity, to include everyone in the scientific process. Finally, we go to the open science pillars. And if you remember, we said these are the main pillars that hold the whole process together. And actually, these pillars are quite many, but I tried to subgroup them into certain categories. And the first category is open knowledge dissemination. Okay, so disseminating knowledge or tools that could help us in disseminating knowledge. Open research processes, so processes that could help us make the whole research process open. Open tools and infrastructure, as the name implies, these are tools that would help us to conduct open science. And finally, community engagement and collaboration. I will try to go bit by bit through these different categories. So starting with open knowledge dissemination. And open knowledge dissemination could be done via different methods. One of these methods is preprints, which are complete but unpublished research papers shared publicly before undergoing peer review. And this has, like, the preprints are becoming increasingly popular, because we all know that if you want to publish a paper, it usually takes a minimum of 2 or 3 months, up to many years. So this is a long time for scientific knowledge to be disseminated. So this led to the people like thinking, oh, we need to make the dissemination of science quicker, and started the revolution of preprint service. So if you have a scientific paper, for example, and it's complete, and you've already, like, you're looking to publish it into a peer review journal, but while you're waiting for the journal to publish it, you could publish this article into a preprint server, and it become instantly, or maybe it takes 1 or 2 days for it to be publicly available for anyone to see and maybe build on. And then, of course, we have open access, and we all know open access is publishing. You have the choice. Some journals give you the choice to publish open access, which makes the publication freely available for the public. But the downside of open access is the fact that you have to, the financial burden on the paywall have to reside on the author of the paper. So it might have solved the issue for the people who want to use the knowledge in the paper, but then this is also an issue for the author, especially if you're coming from a developing countries and for instance, Africa, and you don't have funding. Like, publishing open access could be like $2,000, like close to $2,000, and this would be too much for an African researcher to pay. So open access does solve part of the problem, but not the whole problem. But preprints, on the other hand, sort of solve this whole problem, is that neither the author nor the recipient or the end user of the publication have to pay anything. Also, we have open educational resources, which is basically providing free access to educational content, whatever that content was. Making it freely accessible for everyone is basically enhancing open science dissemination. Then we move on to the open research processes. So trying to see the different stages in which the research is conducted and making all of these stages open. So it makes sense that we start with open data, which is sharing raw research data for transparency and reusability. So now we have many different servers that allow you to deposit your data and make it available for everyone if they want to reuse it or they want to look at it. And this is important for reproducibility, because if you have the data and you have the methodology, then you will be able to reproduce should be able to reproduce the results. So if we have open data, we should also have open methodology, which is disclosing the research methods and protocols for reproducibility purposes. And this has to be in details, like you should not skip parts of the methodologies and try to write everything that you did. And you could even use open notebooks. And these are because, of course, when conducting research, we all have small notebooks that we write our experiments in. So even these notebooks could be made openly available so that everyone could see, like in real time, what was happening when this experiment was being conducted, for example. And finally, after the research is completed and we want to publish it, we have to have open peer review, because peer review has often been done behind closed doors. So you really don't know what's going on when you submit your paper. Sometimes you have reviewers who say we just reject this paper and we don't think it's good, and they don't give you good enough reasons. So here comes open peer review, which is enhancing transparency and inclusivity in the review process. So making this whole process open, okay? The reviewers, first of all, you should know who the reviewers are, because maybe there's a conflict of interest, and you should be able to see which problems do the reviewers have with your manuscript, for example. And this should also be seen by the public, like anyone who sees this paper sees that this was the comments of the reviewer. And this is something that the preprint servers are now trying to do, is that you have your preprint and then you have peers reviewing your preprint and openly saying or commenting on what issues do they see with your work and what recommendations they have. And then we come to the open tools and infrastructure. And this encompasses open source, promoting the use of open source software in research. And a very famous example of this is R for statistical analysis. And like before R, statistical analysis has been done through like SPSS, many paid tools, like you had to pay to get access to this analysis tool. But now using R, you have everything free. And everything you produce, if you had a new statistical procedure that you did, you can openly make it available for other people to benefit from. So this is what is meant by open source. And if you're working in the computational field, then you have codes. All of the computational fields work with codes. So making these codes available for everyone to reuse and rerun. We also have open hardware. So not only software, also hardware could be open, which is promoting the design and production of physical devices or tools and electronics in an open and transparent manner. And for example, there is a very famous example of an open microscope. And in this open microscope, the developers have openly made the process of making this microscope available. So if you want to build this microscope from scratch, you can do it, in fact. I'll try to find you the link for that, because it's a very interesting, it's called Open Flexure Microscope. I'll paste it to the chat. So take a look. It's a very, very interesting. And I hope now that you could see my screen again. So the developers of this microscope have made the actual making process of this microscope available, and they've also made the software for running this microscope available. And this is open hardware. Or even if you don't want, or maybe this tool cannot be built by anyone, but for example, one lab could have a tool and they say, I'm open for anyone to come and use this tool or device. So this is open hardware. And then we have open infrastructure. And these are platforms and tools and services that are essential for conducting and disseminating open science. So for example, maybe creating a website that has training on it that is freely accessible for everyone, or maybe trying to create a conferencing tool, for example, just like Zoom, but then it's open and free for everyone to use. You don't have to subscribe to use this tool. And this is what is meant by open infrastructure. And finally, we have the community engagement and collaboration. And by that, we mean, for example, citizen science, which is, as I told you, a previous example, is that involving the public in scientific research to democratize science and expand participation, because you are taking the data from the public and the public should be the end beneficiary from your data. So it makes sense that you involve the public in making research. So this is very important because maybe you think, oh, I'm a scientist, I know everything, and then you spend so much time and money trying to develop, for example, a solution that you expect that the public would adopt, but then this solution does not maybe coincide with the values of this community. Then you would have wasted a lot of time and money on a solution that will eventually not be used. We also have open educational practices, and this is just like we're trying to do at AREN, is encouraging teaching and learning practices that embrace openness in instructional design and execution. So, and this is what AREN is trying to do with the local network leads program, and hopefully with the community as a whole, is we give you the knowledge, we teach you the knowledge, and then we make this knowledge open for you to use and teach and disseminate for other community members. So this is what is meant by open educational practices. And then we have open advocacy, and this is promoting the values and benefits of open science within the scientific community and to the wider public. And this is exactly also what we're trying to do at AREN, is promoting open science and trying to make individuals who are not aware about open science, make them aware about the different benefits of open science that can bring to them and to their communities. So I think by that, I've finished what I would like to say for you in this session, and I would like to open the floor for any questions. So please, I hope I wasn't talking too fast. So please, if you have any question, any comment, any experience that you had that you would like to share with us, please go ahead.
Lamis, I think there is a question in the chat from
Okay.
Musa posted a question earlier.
Okay, it's if preprints is free, who support preprint? What is the difference between free preprint a reviewed preprint and which requires APCs? Well, preprints are actually not supported by anyone. It's only the servers, and the servers are usually a non-for-profit organization. So they host the the server, and you have like people working on the background, and these people usually like have funding from different funding bodies. So preprints, yes, they are free. They are free for you to post in and from you to get the information in. And the preprint servers themselves and other maybe associated organization offer review for these preprints. For example, we have pre-review, and this is a wonderful open science initiative, which is working on teaching people how to do open peer review, especially for preprints. And there are no APCs whatsoever that are required for either posting a preprint or reading a preprint. APCs are required when you have when you're trying to apply to an open access journal. This is when usually you are required to pay an APC. I hope I answered your question, Musa.
Yes, Lamis, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank
Yes,
you. Thank you, everyone.
Lamis, someone raised the hand, but when you were talking, they lowered the hand. So if that person could unmute and talk and ask your question.
Okay. Yes,
Before
go
we go
ahead,
to the
please.
questions in the chat. Maybe they want to speak or say the question themselves.
Yeah, or if you're not comfortable, you could just post it in the chat.
Yeah, so I think we should go to the next question in the chat by Austin.
Okay, so open peer review is important, especially for researchers from developing countries who are disadvantaged, yes, in publishing their work in journals from developed countries. Yes, this is exactly the point of open peer review, is that there is often a huge bias when it comes to peer reviewing research that's coming, for example, from Africa or India. There is an automatic assumption by reviewers that this research is of lower quality. And if you compare it to a research that, for example, is coming from England or France or USA, then it's automatically thought that these are of better quality. And of course, this is far from the truth. And usually us, like researchers from developing countries, are the one who's suffering. And this is why, actually, this was the whole idea about why open peer review is becoming more and more popular. Yeah, and the question from Austin is that how do you balance open peer review processes and achieving blind peer review? Well, they're completely the opposite. A blind peer review, even though it has many categories, like you can have double blind, I don't know, like but the most known blind review process is that the authors don't know the reviewers. Like the reviewers, they know the authors because they have access to the whole manuscripts, so they know the authors. And for example, one of the reviewers could have a conflict of interest with one of the authors, or as we said, they could have biases based on pre-assumptions that they have. So open peer review, meaning that everything is in the open. Everything is in the open. So I don't think they could be balanced, or maybe I didn't understand your question well, Austin, or did I answer your question?
Yeah, Lamis, I think.
Hello, Lamis. Hello.
Yeah. Austin,
Yeah.
Hello, Lamis.
Yes.
Yes. No. Actually, you answered the question that I had. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, because my concern was, as much as we would like to make sure that the peer review process is open enough, but there are times when my experience is that the paper would go through the blind peer review where you don't know who the authors or who are the reviewers are. So I was looking at how do you strike a balance to make sure there is the objectivity in terms of your review process. I think that was my concern. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, and I think most journals still go through the blind peer review, but now all the preprints and preprint server are using the open peer review process. So I think in the near future, like preprints are going to dominate as a way of scientific dissemination.
Anna, thank you so much. Thank
you, Austin. Thank you. We also have a question from Ahmed. And he said, thank you. How does open science, especially the community engagement pillar, differ from implementation science? Well, I don't think I understand your question very well. Could you elaborate more, please? If you could unmute. Okay, if you can unmute, like I will answer as far as I could understand, is like implementation science should build on community engagement. Like you should have the community engaged in order to have a good implementation of science, because without the community, you will not be able to implement the science. For example, I'll give you an example from my experience. I work on a disease called mycetoma. I don't know, it's a neglected tropical disease. Maybe you have heard or haven't heard of it, but it affects like communities who are living in rural areas, who are far away from the countryside, and from I mean from the main cities. And like these communities are sort of isolated to themselves. So we were trying to implement different awareness techniques to help these communities prevent themselves from having the disease. So the disease mainly come from them wearing barefoot and working in fields which are infected with the microorganism that causes the disease. So a simple thing is that we tell them, oh, please just put on a shoe. And we also try to tell them that whenever you see first signs of the disease, come to seek treatment, because they usually wait for years until the disease has sort of progressed until they come and seek treatment. So we tried to do like, we made, for example, a play, a whole play from prominent actors in Sudan. This is where I'm from. And like, we were so proud of ourselves. Oh, we made this comedic play, and we will make them engaged and understand the importance of coming and seeking us early. And we like tried to make posters, sit with children. Like we tried everything, and nothing worked. Until at the end, we actually appointed a group of social scientists. And I think this is very important. Social science is very important, and it's often neglected while trying to implement any biological or any other implementation. So we had a group of social scientists who went and actually lived in these communities for like 1 or 2 months. And they actually found that the whole issue was that they thought of this disease as a curse from God. They had like a religious or a spiritual connection with this disease. So they think if you had this disease, then you did something really bad in your life, and this is your punishment, and you should just, take it. This is your punishment, and you should just be patient and take it, that this is God is punishing you. And of course, this also has created a stigma in the community that made people hide. Like at the early stages of the diseases, you can hide the disease. So they hide it because it's a very big social stigma, and they don't come to seek treatment. So now, us, the scientists who thought like we did the best that we could, completely changed our approach. So instead of like doing the plays and doing the talking with the community, we went to the religious leaders of that community and like starting making them aware about the disease and the prevention and the importance of early coming to get treatment. And then we started to see a good response, because now the religious leaders are telling them this is not true. It's not a punishment of God, from God. It's just a disease that you could get treated from. So it's a long story, but I hope that I explained sort of the importance of community engagement with implementation science. I hope that this answered your question. No problem. Okay, thank you. I'm happy that you were able to understand. So is there any more question that you'd like to answer? You'd like to ask or share an experience, maybe just like mine? Okay, I think, yeah, we're almost running out of time. So I don't know, Emmanuel, if you would like to say anything.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful session. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Like we said in the email, this is the first of a series of webinars we are trying to organize for the community. So we hope you see you at the subsequent session, since we'll be building on today's knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are any questions. If there are not any questions, then we can end the meeting for now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello. Lamis.
Hello.
Oh, sorry. It seems two of us are speaking.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much. No, mine is not a question as such. I just want to thank you for organizing these sessions. I'm quite sure, like you have said, I think you will be able to attend these sessions. But because I joined it a bit late, because I was in a meeting. I don't know if you introduced what AREN does. I don't know if there was that introduction in the beginning, because I would like to learn what you do, what the work that you do.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Actually, we didn't introduce AREN in this session, but we did have like previous community engagement sessions. But in a nutshell, AREN is an organization where we're trying to help the African scientific community adopt open science. So we're trying to give training on open science to African researchers, and we're sort of empowering those in our community to go and give this training to their communities. So we're trying to create like a snowball effect where you get the knowledge and then you go and disseminate the knowledge. And this is basically in the training part of AREN. We have launched a local network leads training program, where which is a very intensive training program. It will it started in April and it will continue for 6 months, where we had an announcement and application process, and we had about 100 applicants. 70 of them were selected. And now we're giving them intensive training on open science. And at the end of this training, they will be, if they successfully completed, they will be appointed by AREN as local network leads, where they will go to their institutions and deliver this training on behalf of AREN to their community. But we're also happy for all the community members to do that as well. And we're happy to support at any level. And I think Emmanuel could talk more about the community aspect of AREN.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lamis. So one of the motivations behind starting AREN was that Lamis and I, we are quite passionate about open science, but you realize that in Africa, many people who are kind of championing open science work in isolation. There wasn't really a community where everyone could come together and kind of do things together and then support each other. So that was a major reason why we got AREN started. So On the aspect of the community, there are a lot of things we are trying to bring up. I think we initially shared that there is a blog on our website that you could share your experiences, which is quite important because there is no one-size-fits-all approach to open science. We may have shared all these wonderful principles and etc. about OS, but maybe in your institutional context or in your research discipline, it's not really applicable. So we'd want to know your views and etc. That's a core part of the community. So we have the next phase of what we are trying to do in the community coming up, where we are going to set up working groups. The information will be sent out to the community very soon. The idea is to get community members from the various countries and disciplines to come together and kind of understand how open science has progressed within that community. Let's say if we take Nigeria, in the past few years, how has open science progressed? Has it really advanced? Has the interventions really been working? In fact, are the researchers they even aware of open science? The only people that can give us that information, it's the people in Nigeria, because I'm not in Nigeria. So that's one of the reasons why we use the sign-up form to get the details of everyone that joins the community, your research discipline, your country, and other details, so we can kind of progress from there. AREN is a community-led initiative, so we want to bring in initiatives and strategies that would employ the wide range of community members that we have. Right now, we have, I think, 256 community members from I think 27 countries, representing about 200 institutions across Africa. So it's a very good return. So we have a broad representation across Africa, and we want to take advantage of this by getting them actively involved. So I think that will be the next phase of what the community will be doing, and then we'll be sending out the emails and then the opportunities and then how we're going to go about it very soon. So we are glad that you are interested. OS is an open platform. You don't need to really be an expert to contribute. You just need to be interested and ready to learn and collaborate together. So we encourage everyone to take active part in some of the initiatives that are coming up. It'll be a wonderful opportunity for you to also get connected to the global OS initiatives. AREN currently is part of the international AREN community, which has over 18 national networks across the world. We have close partnerships with UK AREN. We work with a lot of the researchers there. So there are a lot of opportunities for you and your institutions to kind of have subsequent collaborations, because most of the time when we get the emails, they are looking for collaborations with researchers from specific countries and etc. So if you are part of AREN and you are active and you are already part of an initiative, then you are the person we refer to for such a collaboration or for such an opportunity. So we'd encourage you to take an active part in subsequent activities for the community here. Thank you very much. So I think, Lamis, we've exceeded our time. So
Yeah.
in the absence of further questions,
there was, I think we could, like, anyone who doesn't have a question, you're free to hop off. But if you have a question or you would be happy to still linger on for the discussion, then we're happy to stay a bit, because Caleb had, if you remember, had his hand raised and he wanted to talk. And then I can see that there are other questions in the chat. But anyone else who's cannot stay longer, then you're absolutely free to go. So Caleb, I think you could ask your question.
All right, thank you very much. It was actually not a question. I wanted to call Emmanuel's attention to a message I sent to him. So he responded to my message already. Yeah, it was about the survey I talked about last time. Yeah, I just shared it in our Slack channel. Yeah, thank you very much.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Caleb. Yeah, we have a question from Nasreen. Yeah, and I think some people, Nina, started to answer. Yeah, and basically, Nasreen, like, each journal have its own preferred format, and they usually, like, if you go to the journal website, they usually like give you a template on how they want the article to be written, basically. And free publisher, highly rated free publishers. There are a lot actually of open access journals. For example, you have PLOS, you have eLife, there are so many open access journals that you could go to. And I think one good resource would be Douage. I'll try to find the link to that. Duaj is actually a directory for open access journals. I'll post the link to the chat. Maybe that would be also a good resource that could go to. Also, Author Aid is very good. I think they provide training on scientific writing. And how can I get free publishing grants and other websites for that? I'm not sure about I'm sure that there would be grants, but I'm not aware of certain grants. But most open access journals, if you write to them that you're from a developing country and all the authors in the article were from Africa, for example, from any developing country, you would usually be waived, the fees would be waived. Like this is the case with many open access journals. I've personally done that with, for example, PLOS. When we as Sudanese publish in PLOS, we usually don't have to pay any article processing fees. It's waived because we come from a developing country. So I think you could just ask the journal or maybe look in their website whether they do have this plan for developing countries or not. And some journals like eLife, for example, like they don't ask you even like what is the issue. If you just tell them that I cannot pay, they will waive the fee. They don't even ask you for proof or anything. So I hope that answered your question. Thank you, Nina. Thank you very much for attending. Yeah, and as I said, we will provide you with the recording and the slides for this presentation, and we will have maybe like a shared drive, which we will deposit these trainings. And I think Emmanuel will inform you more with an email subsequent to this training. Yeah, I think if there are no more questions, I would just like to thank you for attending and staying overtime, almost 10 minutes overtime. And we hope to see you in the upcoming community trainings. So thank you very much for joining.